Hi, I'm Jackson Crawford. I'm an Old Norse specialist and I make videos about all kinds of topics in Norse language, myth, runes, sagas, etc. I had a series going about 2 years ago as I make this, following the adventures of probably the most interesting character in the kind of ensemble saga called Hrolf's Saga Kraka, and that character is Bodvar Bjarki. And we had gotten right up to the adventures of Bodvar Bjarki and King Hrolfr in Sweden, and they were about to leave when I left this series behind. So now I'm going to continue with part 4, 2 years later, of Bodvar Bjarki. Alright, so following what I covered in part 3, King Hrolfr and his champions mount up to ride out of Sweden. Remember that at the time, Skåne was Danish, so there was a land border they could make for. So on the way, Hrolfr spots a gold ring in the road, and he stops to take off one of his own and throw it down next to that one. It must be told, he says, far and wide, that I do not stoop to pick up gold, even if it is lying in the street in front of me. And let none of my champions be so bold that he picks it up. That ring was thrown there to deter us on our journey. So, of course, he's showing his contempt for, needing wealth so much that he'd just pick up some that was there on the road. He's going to throw some of his own alongside to show how much he doesn't need it. So they proceed to Fyrisvellir, a valley or the town within that valley. Now, they are pursued by the large Swedish army led by King Adils. And Hrolfr takes out the silver drinking horn full of gold that his mother had given him, and he starts dumping its contents out on the ground behind him. The Swedish soldiers start rooting around in this and stopping to grab it and squabble with each other. And Adils berates them in classic, movie villain style, because this uncountable army is letting 12 men get away, and he presses them forward. But then Hrolfr throws down the greatest of his treasures, the ring Sveagris, and Adils tries to stretch out as he rides to pick it up. But King Hrolfr sees this, turns his own horse back, and says, I have made the most powerful of the Swedes poke around like a pig. And just as King Adils is starting to swing the tip of his spear that he's caught the ring in back around himself, Hrolfr rides past him at a fast pace and chops off both of his buttocks all the way down to the bone with his sword Skovnung, which the saga pauses to tell us at this moment is the best sword anyone has ever carried in the Northlands. King Adils and the Swedes retreat with the king suffering heavy blood loss and the exultant Danes slaughtering the retreaters. Now, the Danes ride the whole day till near nightfall they approach a farm. And here we find that it is the same one-eyed farmer Hrani who is there to greet them and congratulate them on their journey. What will Odin in disguise say and do? Let me give you a quick word from my sponsor and I'll come back to that. Well, Hrani, who is obviously Odin, this one-eyed man with magical powers, invites them in, and he offers Hrolfr a sword, a shield, and a suit of mail. But Hrolfr, for reasons that aren't quite clear, rejects them. And so Hrani berates him for rejecting his hospitality and his gifts, and makes it clear that they will not find a place to stay with him that night. But as they ride off, Bodvar turns to Hrolfr and says, good ideas often dawn on the unwise in hindsight. And then he tells that he's wondering if what they've rejected is the favor of Odin. And Hrolfr says, I suspect the same. This man must have been Odin the Old, as he certainly was one-eyed. Well, they ride back, but the farm and the farmer are gone, at which point Hrolfr says, it will do us no good to search for him because he is an evil spirit. Remember, Hrolfr and his champions are portrayed pretty consistently as what the sagas called godless men, not flat earth atheists, as TV tropes would put it, but men who don't know about Christianity or don't have any, reasonable way to shoehorn a conversion in their timeline or their history, but who reject the old gods. So they are Christians in waiting. If only they knew about Christ or had an opportunity to be converted, is kind of the idea. And so, of course, calling him an evil spirit is a very Christian turn of phrase. That spirit word is not common in Old Norse for any kind of living being or spiritual being. That's the whole. Anyway. Well, they return to Denmark, famous and victorious men, but then Bodvar continues to worry what it means that they rejected the aid of Odin. And he advises the king to pick fewer battles from here on out because his reputation is well established anyway and no one will attack him. Of course, Odin, as a god, governs victories. Whether or not these men in Hrolf's retinue believe in him, he may still have that kind of power. Remember, early Christian missionaries tend not to be there to convince people that their gods don't exist, but that their gods aren't as powerful as God. Hrolf rejects Bodvar's counsel and says, Eudna ræður hversmanns lífi en ekki sá illi andi. Fate determines each man's life, not that evil spirit. And again, that evil spirit phrasing is very Christian in its language, even though this is supposed to be a pre-Christian happening. All right, so these notes have been sitting here on stationery from the hotel I stayed at in summer 2019 when I was working in Montreal with Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's taken a long time, but then in part 5, we'll look at the final battle of Bodvar Bjarki and King Hrolf and his champions. And this book will probably be out in about September 2021. It is finalized, more or less. We're putting it through the very last stages of production now. All right, from beautiful Colorado, Pikes Peak country, I'm wishing you all the best.